Welcome back to our channel at the turn of the millennium. As America looked forward to a new era of digital innovation, global change, and national reflection, the U.S. Mint found itself engaged in something quietly monumental, reshaping how Americans viewed the humble quarter. The 50-state quarters program, launched in 1999, was still fresh and gaining momentum. Each new design commemorated a different state, minted for a limited time, and intended to reinvigorate public interest in collecting coins straight from their pocket change. For many, it worked. Suddenly, ordinary Americans were checking their change, lining up coins on kitchen tables, watching eagerly as new designs were released every 10 weeks. It was a brilliant act of cultural engagement and a logistical feat. Billions of coins minted across the Philadelphia and Denver mints, each bearing state-specific artistry. The year 2000 brought new additions to the series: Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Virginia. But hidden within the clatter of freshly minted coins and the fervor of public enthusiasm, a mistake quietly emerged, an anomaly so peculiar, so unlikely, it would take years before its true significance began to reveal itself. It wasn't the result of careless hands or rushed production. Quite the opposite. The minting facilities in Philadelphia and Denver were operating with mechanical precision, churning out coins on an industrial scale. Quality checks were in place. Errors weren't expected. They weren't supposed to happen. But sometimes, despite everything, something strange slips through, a ghost in the machine. That ghost surfaced in the form of a coin that, to the average person, looked almost perfect. It began innocently enough, as these things always do. A collector named Denise, modest in reputation but meticulous in her habits, was sifting through rolls of state quarters she'd picked up from a local bank in rural Ohio. She'd done it for years, part hobby, part therapy, part hope. Most of her finds were ordinary, even predictable. But on one particular evening in early spring, her magnifying glass stopped over a Virginia quarter that didn't quite align with her expectations. At first glance, it seemed to be a standard Virginia state quarter. 3 ships, the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, sailing toward the Jamestown settlement. But there was something odd about the texture, the luster. Denise couldn't quite place it. She turned the coin in her palm, letting the light catch its surface. The edge didn't feel like it should. It was too smooth, almost slick, lacking the distinctive copper-nickel sheen of a modern U.S. quarter. Puzzled, she placed it beside another from the same roll. Side by side, the difference became unmistakable. She picked up her scale. The standard quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. This one weighed 6.3. Heart pounding, Denise opened her reference books. She knew what the coin should look like, what it should weigh, what it should be made of. But the deeper she dug, the more questions piled up. There were whispers online about a strange quarter, an anomaly struck on the wrong planchet. The phrase buzzed in her ears: experimental composition. Could it be? She reached out to a numismatic contact, someone she'd met years prior at a coin show in Pittsburgh. He asked for images. Then he asked to see it in person. When the coin arrived in the mail, he called her the very next day, his voice shaking with barely contained excitement. "This is something, Denise. I think you've got one of the Sacagawea planchet errors." The revelation unraveled with equal parts wonder and disbelief. Somehow, a few 2000 state quarters, specifically the Virginia and South Carolina issues, had been struck on planchets meant for the newly released Sacagawea dollar. Those golden coins, with their distinct manganese brass alloy, were strikingly different from quarters in both appearance and composition. But in a rare mix-up, a tiny number of Sacagawea planchets had made their way onto the quarter presses. How or why remained a mystery. The U.S. Mint never officially acknowledged how it happened. Was it a result of early testing? A transitional error? An accident buried under red tape and internal reports? Regardless, these quarters now existed. They gleamed a strange gold. They weighed too much. They carried the wrong metallic resonance. And most startlingly, they were legal tender, despite never being intended for release. Word spread slowly through numismatic circles. The coins began to surface, just a handful at first, no more than a dozen verified examples in the early years. Each one triggered waves of speculation. Some collectors dismissed them at first as post-mint tampering. Others speculated they were test strikes. But the grading authorities weighed in. The coins were genuine. Struck at the mint. True errors. Never meant for circulation. Denise's coin, one of the earliest discovered, was graded MS66 and certified as authentic by both PCGS and NGC. That certification changed everything. From the moment it hit the collector market, demand surged. Offers came in immediately, 5 figures, then 6. Denise, unsure at first, turned down the early bids. She wasn't ready. The coin was still hers. A part of her. Over the next decade, other examples appeared. One sold privately for $45,000. Another fetched $67,000 at auction. But the true breakthrough came in 2019, when a pristine example, gleaming, near flawless, gold-toned and mysterious, was listed at a major auction house. Bidding opened quietly. Then it erupted. Collectors knew what they were looking at. An error that wasn't supposed to exist. A coin born of two worlds, the dollar and the quarter caught in a moment of accidental transition. The final sale price reached $136,000. A quarter, once worth 25 cents, now held the value of a sports car. Yet the story wasn't over. A twist emerged not long after. In a coin shop in Tampa, a customer walked in with a quarter they swore looked different. The dealer, skeptical at first, examined it under a loupe. It didn't just have the color of the Sacagawea dollar, it had something else. A faint, raised mark under the eagle's wing on the reverse. It wasn't part of the design. It wasn't damage. It looked deliberate. News broke quickly. This new specimen bore what appeared to be a fragment of another coin's design, possibly the result of a die clash or a misfed blank that had struck twice. Experts reviewed it and declared it not only a wrong planchet error, but also a dual strike with partial overlapping design transfer. A layered minting mistake. And no other error like it had been recorded in the series. It was utterly unique. When this coin finally sold in a private deal, it set a record, $211,000. A single quarter, minted in error, passed unnoticed through hands, machines, and bank vaults before settling into the hands of someone who simply paid attention. Collectors now search every roll, every jar, every pocketful of change from the year 2000. They hold Virginia and South Carolina quarters up to the light, weighing them, testing them, hoping. These errors aren't easy to spot. Their rarity lies not in their design, but in what lies beneath, in the unseen metal, the mistaken alloy, the accidental composition. What fascinates isn't just the money. It's the accident. The intersection of precision and chance. A moment where a golden blank met the wrong die and created something that was both flawed and flawless at once. These quarters weren't supposed to exist, and yet they do. And maybe that's the most valuable part of them, not the material, not the price tag, but the fact that sometimes the most ordinary objects carry the weight of history's most extraordinary mistakes. The year 2007 saw the United States Mint continuing its ambitious journey through the 50-state quarters program, a series that had captivated millions of collectors nationwide. In its 9th year, the program was steadily building momentum, featuring designs that celebrated the rich heritage and landmarks of each state. That year, 5 new quarters entered circulation: Florida, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Michigan. Each quarter told a unique story, etched in metal and destined to pass through countless hands. But behind the scenes, amid the whir of the presses and the gleam of freshly struck coins, a peculiar anomaly began to take shape, something almost imperceptible at first, yet destined to spark fascination and frenzy in the numismatic world. It was not a dramatic double strike or a glaringly off-center imprint, but a subtle deviation, a delicate error that would only reveal itself through the careful eye of a devoted collector. Among those who found themselves enmeshed in this unfolding story was a collector named Marcus. A seasoned enthusiast from Pennsylvania, Marcus had spent decades studying coins with an almost obsessive passion. For him, every coin told a tale, history frozen in alloy and design, waiting to be discovered. One ordinary afternoon, Marcus sifted through a small batch of quarters he'd recently purchased from a local bank, aiming to spot any interesting varieties or minting anomalies. He carefully examined each coin under the soft glow of his desk lamp. One quarter caught his attention, a 2007 Michigan State quarter that looked, at first glance, unremarkable. But as Marcus held it up to the light and ran his fingers over its surface, he noticed something unusual. The date appeared faint, almost worn, yet the rest of the coin gleamed with a sharp, proof-like finish. His curiosity piqued, Marcus compared it to a typical Michigan quarter from the same year. The contrast was startling. The error was subtle, a phenomenon known among collectors as a weak strike, where the die fails to impress the coin fully, resulting in a partial or faint image. Yet this quarter was different. The weakness wasn't uniform. The state motto, "If you seek a pleasant peninsula," appeared almost ghostly, while the Great Lakes depicted on the reverse seemed slightly blurred, their outlines softened. Marcus's pulse quickened. Could this be a known weak strike variant? Or something else entirely? He began to research, reaching out to fellow numismatists and consulting detailed guides on state quarters and mint errors. Slowly, the picture emerged. While weak strikes were not uncommon, the 2007 Michigan quarter exhibited a unique pattern that set it apart, a consistent and reproducible flaw that appeared in a very limited number of coins struck that year. As Marcus delved deeper, he uncovered whispers and scattered reports from other collectors who'd found similar quarters. Each reported the same faint details and partial impressions, but none had been officially documented or widely publicized. The U.S. Mint had not acknowledged the issue publicly, and major grading companies were only beginning to recognize the phenomenon. The emotional journey was intense. Marcus felt the thrill of discovery mingled with a growing responsibility to document, to share, and to preserve this oddity. He reached out to a respected grading company to have his coin evaluated. The result was both encouraging and enigmatic. The coin received a designation noting its weak strike characteristic, but was graded as Mint State 65 for overall condition. With certification in hand, the coin's perceived value began to shift. At first, collectors approached cautiously, unsure if this weak strike was a collectible rarity or just a production anomaly without much significance. Prices hovered modestly, an intriguing curiosity, but not a premium item. However, as more coins surfaced and grading authorities acknowledged the pattern, interest surged. The 2007 Michigan quarter weak strike became sought after for its uniqueness within the state quarter series. Auctions started listing these coins with escalating bids, sometimes reaching several $100s. It was a far cry from the quarter's face value, but modest in the broader world of rare coins. What truly amplified the coin's appeal, however, was a startling revelation that surfaced a few years later. A detailed metallurgical analysis conducted by an independent researcher found that the weak strike quarters shared a subtle but distinct difference in metal composition compared to standard coins of that year. The alloy mixture was slightly off-spec, an imperceptible shift in copper and nickel content, likely due to a temporary supply variance or an unnoticed minting batch error. This discovery introduced an unexpected twist. The error wasn't just mechanical, it was chemical. The altered alloy composition explained the coin's softer strike and slightly different visual texture. It wasn't merely a die problem, but a rare confluence of factors that made these quarters one of a kind. The numismatic community was electrified. Suddenly, the 2007 Michigan quarter weak strike was no longer just a faint image on metal, it was a tangible testament to the complexity of minting processes, a snapshot of an unusual moment in the mint's operational history. Further intrigue arose when a small number of these weak strike quarters were found bearing faint doubled images on the obverse, suggesting a slight misalignment during the striking process. This secondary error compounded their rarity and value, turning select specimens into coveted treasures. One such coin, graded at MS-66 with the doubled weak strike, sold for an impressive sum at auction, shattering previous records for the variety. Collectors, like Marcus, found themselves on the edge of a dynamic chase, searching rolls, trading, and verifying coins, driven by the excitement of uncovering these subtle anomalies. Each find was a step deeper into a story woven through history, manufacturing quirks, and human fascination with imperfection. The value of these quarters continues to fluctuate, reflecting broader trends in the coin market, but always buoyed by the narrative of their uniqueness. For some, it's a speculative gamble. For others, a passion-driven pursuit. But for all, the 2007 Michigan quarter weak strike stands as a reminder that even in mass production, chance and error create moments of wonder. Ultimately, this quarter embodies more than its monetary worth. It is a physical record of a fleeting imperfection, an intersection where history, craftsmanship, and serendipity converge. And in that convergence lies the enduring allure of coin collecting, the endless search for stories hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. The year was 2019, a time when the United States Mint was busily producing quarters that would continue a tradition stretching back nearly a century. These coins, modest in size but rich in symbolism, carried with them the stories of all 50 states, each quarter a tiny canvas celebrating history, culture, and identity. Among the flood of these metal pieces destined for everyday exchange, a subtle anomaly slipped through the rigorous inspections. It was a small error, easily overlooked, but destined to alter the story of one particular quarter forever. The 2019 U.S. quarter dollar was part of the ongoing America the Beautiful Quarters program, which had begun a few years earlier, spotlighting national parks and sites across the country. Each coin bore the familiar profile of George Washington on its obverse, while the reverse side carried intricate artwork depicting the featured landmark. The 2019 series highlighted 6 unique locations, from the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area to the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. These coins were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, identified by their respective mint marks. The 2019 quarters were designed to be pristine symbols of American pride, yet tucked within these perfectly minted pieces was an error that would captivate the numismatic world. In the busy shuffle of everyday transactions, coins are often glanced at and forgotten, their designs taken for granted. It wasn't until a collector, an avid enthusiast with a keen eye honed over years of hunting rare finds, stumbled upon a curious coin that the mystery began to unfold. This collector, whom we'll call Alex, had a habit of sifting through rolls of change, seeking out anything that shimmered differently, bore unusual markings, or just felt off in some intangible way. One afternoon, while sorting through a handful of quarters from change received at a local store, Alex noticed something unusual. A quarter from 2019 caught the light strangely. At first glance, it looked just like any other, but on closer inspection, there was a faint doubling on the lettering, a ghostly second impression that blurred the edge of the Liberty inscription and the year. The mint mark seemed slightly askew, a tiny shadow hinting at a deeper anomaly. It wasn't the usual wear or damage from circulation. It was something more intrinsic, something born from the minting process itself. The moment Alex realized this was not just any quarter, the familiar thrill of discovery surged. This was the kind of find that numismatists dream about, a mint error that could transform a common coin into a piece of history. But what kind of error was this exactly? And how rare was it? Alex's curiosity grew, propelling a journey into research and networking with other collectors. Through online forums, coin clubs, and expert consultations, Alex pieced together the nature of the mistake. This quarter exhibited a form of Doubling, technically known as a double die error. This happens when the die, the engraved metal piece that stamps the coin's design, shifts slightly between impressions, causing elements of the design to overlap imperfectly. The result is a coin with duplicated images, doubling on letters or numbers that give it a distorted yet fascinating appearance. While double die errors are not unheard of, their significance depends on the extent and clarity of the doubling, the coin's rarity, and the demand from collectors. In the case of the 2019 quarter, these errors were scarce. The mint's quality control rarely allowed such coins to circulate widely, but occasionally one slipped through the cracks. Alex's find was one of those elusive anomalies, a piece that told a story of mechanical imperfection amidst the precision of modern coin production. Over the next months, word of Alex's discovery spread quietly within collector circles. At first, the coin was seen as a curiosity, interesting but not necessarily valuable. Prices for similar errors had fluctuated modestly in past decades, and it was unclear whether this 2019 variant would ever command significant attention. Yet, as more collectors examined the coin and experts authenticated the doubling as genuine, the perception began to shift. Auction houses started listing the 2019 double die quarter, though at first with cautious estimates. The coin's unique visual appeal, combined with its modern provenance, sparked intrigue. Some saw it as a potential investment, others simply marveled at the flaw in what was otherwise a flawlessly minted piece. Prices began creeping upward, quietly at first, with occasional sales pushing the value above typical quarter prices by several $100s. Alex watched this evolution with a mix of hope and hesitation. The coin had journeyed from an unnoticed piece of pocket change to a spotlighted collectible, but its future was still uncertain. Would it become a mainstream treasure, coveted by thousands, or remain a niche interest for specialized collectors? The tension around its worth mirrored the mystery locked in its double die, the blurred lines between ordinary and extraordinary. As the months passed, more discoveries of the 2019 double die quarter surfaced, each slightly different in the intensity and placement of the doubling. This variety added complexity to the market, prompting deeper studies into the coin's production history. Some errors appeared more dramatic, with doubling extending across multiple design elements. Others were subtler, visible only under magnification. This variety fueled collector debates and elevated the coin's profile. Then came an unexpected twist, a revelation that redefined the error's rarity and value. Amidst the growing pool of these double die quarters, one was found bearing not just doubling but a rare, clipped planchet defect. A clipped planchet occurs when the blank metal disc intended for striking is improperly cut, leaving a curved, missing segment on the coin's edge. When combined with a double die error, this made the coin a dual error marvel, exponentially rarer than either flaw alone. This hybrid error coin stunned the numismatic community. It was a tangible embodiment of chance, a mechanical quirk followed by an even more extraordinary accident. Collectors quickly realized the potential impact on value. Dual error coins often command premiums exponentially higher than single error counterparts, and this 2019 quarter was no exception. Alex, upon hearing the news of this dual error discovery, felt the same thrill rekindle. The journey of a simple coin had become a saga of unpredictability and rarity. The clipped planchet wasn't merely a mistake, it was a unique fingerprint, a signature of imperfection etched into history. It pushed the coin from an interesting oddity to a coveted treasure. The market responded accordingly. Prices for the dual error coin soared, with bidders willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars for a piece so unique. The story behind it, the serendipity of its creation, the years of obscurity, the moment of discovery captured imaginations beyond typical coin enthusiasts. Suddenly, a 2019 quarter, a coin many viewed as mundane, had transcended into a symbol of the unpredictable beauty found in errors. Collectors, who had once overlooked this series, began to search frantically through rolls of quarters, hoping to find their own glimpse of this remarkable mistake. Coin dealers adjusted their valuations, and experts revisited their authentication methods to accommodate this newfound phenomenon. But the most fascinating part remained the coin's physical characteristics. The doubling itself was sharp in some areas, faded in others, almost as if the die had shifted mid-strike. The clipping was curved and smooth, indicating the planchet had been cut prior to minting but after blanking, creating a crescent-shaped missing edge that didn't interfere with the coin's overall strike but made it unmistakably unique. The two errors, combined, told a story of process failure at multiple stages, a slight misalignment of the die, paired with a rare miscut of the metal disc. Together, they created a one-of-a-kind artifact, a bridge between precision manufacturing and human imperfection. In the end, the 2019 US $2 error is more than a coin. It is a narrative of chance, discovery, and value transformation. From a quiet production year in a bustling mint to the hands of a perceptive collector, it reminds us that even the smallest objects hold stories waiting to be uncovered, stories that challenge the mundane and celebrate the extraordinary hidden in plain sight.